promote peace and economic development. According to resources, the agreement is expected to be signed by their foreign ministers at a ceremony in Washington with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Both Qatar and the U.S. have shown interest in mediating a resolution with the Gulf state, long positioning as a peacemaker, while Washington targets a greater share of Congo's mineral wealth. A diplomatic source said the agreement aims to foster a pathway to peace, stability, and integrated economic development in eastern Congo and the resumption of normal bilateral relations. This comes as Washington continues talks to invest billions of dollars in mineral-rich Congo, just as Rwanda said it was also speaking to Washington about a possible mineral deal. The United Nations and Western governments say Rwanda has provided arms and troops to M23 rebels. However, Rwanda denies this accusation, saying its military has acted in self-defense against Congo's army and the militia founded by perpetrators of the 1994 genocide. Moving on, in an unfortunate incident in Congo, no fewer than 10 persons died when an artisan gold mine collapsed in a rebel-controlled Kabare territory in the country's eastern part, authorities have said. The collapse was caused by a natural disaster caused by climate change. The rebel-appointed vice governor of South Kivu, Dunia Wenge, said he added killed. And workers did not of South a collapse at the mine. 6 deaths have been confirmed, while many bodies yet to be Moreover, counties central clashes between the South Sudan Defense Forces and Sudan's Liberation Army in opposition. Only person, Priyanka Chaudhuri, said the fighting, which erupted last week, had displaced over 1,000 persons, mostly women, children, and the elderly, from their homes. However, the commissioner of Morobo County, Data Charles, said over 7,000 persons have been displaced. In a statement, OMIS appeals to all military difference through dialogue and access for peacekeepers and reinforce security. Concern over the deteriorating security situation in and Morobo counties, disclosing that the clashes between the SSPDF and the SPLA for Community Empowerment for Organization, Mondiakani, denied the use of violence to settle differences. To transition acute food shortage in with within weeks. The agency warns that it by the United States under Donald Trump and other defense spending prompted by growing fears of Russia and China. In an internal memo yesterday, WFP Director Stephen Omolo said the cuts were necessary due to the unprecedented funding environment, with the 2025 donor outlook at $6.4 billion, or a 40% reduction versus last year. Now, Al-Shabaab and Somalia Wagachi town in the middle of the Al-Qaeda linked group road between Mogadishu and the Galmudug state. Had captured the base, and Wagachi town claimed the government denied. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Information said that government forces had over 40 persons after they tried to attack the base Thursday morning. However, Army officer Hussein Ali said the armed group had taken the town of Wagachi after fierce fighting after getting more reinforcements. He disclosed that their forces lost 12 men, mostly clan fighters, while Al-Shabaab lost about 1,000 more fighters. Moving on, United States officials have interviewed South Africans seeking refugee status about trouble with land disputes, crime, countries. Some South Africans was them and their accounts of persecution. Over 30 applicants had already been approved, according to a person familiar with the matter. A South African farmer who's on condition of anonymity. The staff at the embassy were exceptionally friendly and showed empathy. President Donald Trump had issued a February 7th executive order calling for the U.S. to settle Afrikaner refugees. It said the Afrikaner are descendants of mostly Dutch settlers were victims of just racial discrimination. At home, however, Trump Congolese and other fleeing conflicts after they had been vetted and cleared. What does now make sense of this story is Mr. Peter voice of the House Affairs analyst and also an economist by profession. Mr. Peter, a very good afternoon to you.
Thank you.
Let's get to the interesting time here in South Africa. Rest given the mint and taken back to the US, what does that Africa that have been getting banned sanctions from the Donald
Yes. Him, I mean, I have a lot of respect for him.
Okay.
Political independence, sovereignty. South Africa is still in the hands of the Britons and the Indians.
Okay.
Understand me? So
Okay.
South Africans are still servants in their own country. Understand me? South Africans are still servants in their own country.
How do you mean when you say they are still servants? I mean, they go freely in the country, they do business in the country, they gain even much more wealth.
No, they are not gaining wealth. Understand me? I say, the economy of South Africa is not in the hands of South Africans. It is in the hands of Britons and Indians,
Because
which is foreigners.
because they are still investing funding and all in
The economic independence. But it's not. He, one white fucking
back. Ask for you said
take off
can take then well
this
chance eat back.
people, this them. They are there. And that Nigeria
of South.
see. Okay.
One out of
1 million.
quite unfortunate. Now, Mr. Peter, over 30 applicants have been approved, and as it stands, earlier thousands, 7,000 precisely.
70,000.
As at March or February, I can't even remember now.
February.
As of February, yes. Over 70,000 applied, and presently over 30 applicants have been approved. Now, it means they've been going through rigorous
vetting,
interview and all.
profile.
Don't and find things
Because the South African gap Africa over his back that
okay.
times South Africans may not know how to handle those farms and may give it over to the Indians.
Now, what just flashed through my head while you were talking is xenophobia. Would this particular move on the part of Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, in terms of taking back these lands, would it see other nationals who, of course, reside in South Africa, and we have quite a number of them, Nigerians, quite a number of Southern Africans, maybe within the Zimbabwe and all, live in South Africa? Would they see these people, would this kind of move see these people take over the farmland, and would that also go well on the part of South African nationals who, of course, might be feeling the heat because they're not and would no more be getting what they used to get from the government as a result of the influx of what comes from agriculture in South Africa?
You know, I said that there are South Africans who are going to inherit this lands and actually going to hand it over to Indians, not to their fellow Africans. Mind you, xenophobia is their fellow African that they are killing.
Yes.
They are not killing Indians. They're not killing Indians in South Africa. And after Britain, the next people in control of the economy is Indians.
Right.
But Indians are even employing Nigerians and other nationalities instead of South Africans, because South Africans are not hardworking, as I say.
Okay.
But they still prefer Indians to Nigerians, Ghanaians, and so on and so forth. So instead of handing over those lands to Nigerians or to Ghanaians, they would prefer Indians taking over it.
Wow. Now, I'm going to also ask you on the part of the international relationship between South Africa and the U.S. As this continues, do you see Donald Trump in the nearer days maybe peddling down on the sanctions he's placed on South Africa, and of course the 8 courts that have really been the ban on South Africa at this point? Well,
the issue is that
will it be lifted in any way?
Cyril Ramaphosa is still talking tough. Understand? And going from his background, before becoming the president, he was the president of ANC,
right.
African National Congress. So he was the one that was leading on the struggle when Nelson Mandela was in prison.
Right.
So that mentality
It's still there.
is still there.
His confidence is still high.
That's why he is able to do what Mbeki
Thabo Mbeki.
didn't do. And understand me?
Okay.
Because they come from different background. Ramaphosa come from the activist background.
Okay.
Understand? That's why he had decided to do this.
Now, some quarters have said that Cyril Ramaphosa, being a major player with the G20 nations, I beg your pardon, BRICS nation. As he stands, he's gaining more confidence because of that relationship, which is the reason why he's still hell-bent on carrying out these particular return of farmland to his people. Is that any way possible? He's looking from that perspective.
I am a student of research.
Okay.
And I have researched the BRIC nations.
Right.
Only 33% of the world economy is in the hand of the BRICS.
That's big enough, don't you think?
33%.
That's big enough, don't you think so?
Is it a pass mark?
Okay.
It's not a pass mark. And when you have 33 and 67% elsewhere, the BRICS might not be able to save him because they are still having their own problems.
In their nations.
India is not finding it easy. China is also not finding it easy. Understand me?
Okay.
So, and that's one of the reasons why America is hell-bent on frustrating South Africa. Why do you join the BRICS? Understand me?
Okay, so this is another part of the conversation. Cyril Ramaphosa, on one part, is trying to claim his land, ancestral land, for his people, and on the other part, the US...
BRICS, which is against the United States interest. So shouldn't think that Donald Trump would be happy with him.
So going forward, you don't see Donald Trump administration pedaling down on the sanctions that have been placed on South Africa. You don't see it happening.
More sanctions will come unless he withdraw his membership from BRICS.
Now, if more sanctions come, let me ask you, from an economic point of view, what's the implication of that on the economy of South Africa? And of course, you know, South Africa is not that buoyant in terms of the economy.
They have gold.
Yes.
Understand? They have gold and other natural resources.
Right.
And I think I have said on this program, there's nothing like a poor country. What we have is a failure in resource management. This is what results in poverty. When you fail to manage the resources in your country. That's why countries that are not, that they don't have the resources that will make them rich.
Okay.
Congo is one of the poorest nations in the world. But in mineral resources, they are number one. But it's not being managed well because the scavenging is going on by different interest groups.
Okay.
So, and the gold in South Africa, what has been sustaining South Africa is mainly farming. And these farming are in the hands of the whites. That's very cheap in South Africa as food is very cheap in the United States.
Okay.
Americans can complain of most things, but not hunger. That's compared to other countries. But it seems that Ramaphosa has removed his eye from the ball.
Okay.
Understand me? He's now getting distracted by getting into fights that does not concern him.
And when he say he got his eyes off the ball, are you referring to the path of farming, which of course have been a major revenue inflow for them? Or are you saying something else that Africans would want to find out about when you say he's taking his eyes off the ball? Farming is the bedrock of South African economy. Okay.
Understand me? And the people who have been doing that over the years have been sustaining your economy. There should have been a kind of a transition, not outright takeover.
Okay.
The after the takeover will create a vacuum. Understand me? What you have done is to send black men to understudy those white people.
Before
And
making this
it
decision.
will take a process. It's not what will happen in a month or two.
So in other words, this whole move would still affect the economy of South
It will
Africa.
still affect the economy of South Africa.
Now, how do you think they might get out of it as soon as possible? Because South Africa is also another country that quite a number of the agricultural produce that comes from there.
Most countries in Southern Africa,
Yes.
Mauritius, Mauritania, Botswana,
Right.
their is South Africa. Understand me?
So if the New York is affected, how would they survive?
It's going to affect them too.
Oh, wow.
It's going to affect. So it's going to have a chain reaction. That's in South Africa.
Now, I want to jump off this story, but too many questions come to my head. But I get help from these African
Brits.
countries when it comes manpower support in the near days. If this is finally seen the light of the day.
These days, we are not talking of manpower anymore. We're talking of technology. Understand me? What 20 men can do, a robot can do it. So the issue of manpower is 100 years ago.
Now, that is where
That's why I say the economy will be affected, because when we don't have technology. Technology does two things. It makes job easier. It reduces costs.
okay.
Understand? Because machines cannot get sick, but human beings do get sick. Understand me? So for me, he should have found a way of doing it, but he entered into fights that did not concern him.
Oh, well, I just want to jump off this particular story and get to another one. Interestingly, the Rome-based United Nations agency has said that food support for Sudan might not be getting to them as proposed, and that's as a result of the fact that shortfalls would be happening. Again, the fight in Sudan has made navigation of food aid to Sudanese become very, very, very tedious for the United Nations agency. From your perspective, what does that spell for Sudan, a nation in consistent war, as it stands?
The war in Sudan has lasted over 50 years.
Quite an unfortunate one, really.
And that's why in Sudan now, we now have more women than men, because a lot of their men have died in the war. Understand me? So it is going to spell more doom to them, because they are already in a precarious state. So this is not what the news that they should be hearing at this point in time. It's not a good one. But I remember last year, WFP, that World Food Program, said that they needed 7 billion to stop hunger. That it sounded like a joke. So Donald Trump and Musk asked them, so if I give you 7 billion, you will stop hunger in the world. Understand me? If you can promise me that, I'll give you the 7 billion. So they now change that it can help.
But again, speaking of WFP, they have said they're seeking $698 million to help 7 million people from May to September this year in Sudan. A very critical one for even the World Food Program. What can be done to not only help Sudan as a nation, but also the WFP, who at this point is still trying to navigate giving food aids to some of these war-torn countries?
The truth is that A lot of the economies in the world are not doing well. Understand? And most of them are now practicing country first. Country first. That's taking care of your own people first. And so, and it's affecting the donations to these agencies. Understand me?
Yes.
It is affecting donations to WFP. That if you feel pain or understand, you are conscious. But when you feel other person's pain, you are human. Understand me?
Yes.
So I want leaders in the world to start feeling to become human by feeling all the pains of other people and doing something about it.
Oh, well, hopefully the other leaders in the world would want to do this. As I let you go in less than 1 minute, of course, Rwanda about to sign a peace agreement, and this would happen in Washington, the U.S. You would recall that the Donald Trump administration and, of course, the Qatari government have been mediating in this situation. And for once, we're seeing some relative developments come from that end. What do you make of this? African problem is not getting African solution, according to some quarters. What do you make of this, basically, Mr. Peter?
Well, we shall thank Americans for voting Donald Trump, who doesn't like people being killed. It's a very positive development.
Right.
For the 4 years that Biden was in power, he never thought of making peace between this warring faction. So I see it as a positive development. And if it's signed, it's going to help them to recover, because without peace, there will never be development.
But then again, some quarters have said that Donald Trump's involvement at this point is also underlined, laced with wanting to get some mineral resources from DR Congo.
But the world is about interest, and no country is a Father Christmas.
That's about where we have to just draw the curtain in the analysis segment. We've been talking with Mr. Peter Anosike, who is Voice of the People TV's in-house political affairs analyst, and of course, an economist by top profession. Once again, thank you so very much, Mr. Peter, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
The rest of the African news will continue shortly, just after this quick break. Just stay with us. Glad to have you back. It is still the African News right here on Voice of the People Television. Now to more stories. International investors at a high-level engagement in Washington, D.C. have hailed Ghana's strong economic progress under the government stabilization program. The meeting, held on the sidelines of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank spring meetings, showcased Ghana's remarkable strides in restoring macroeconomic stability, with investors expressing renewed confidence in the country's fiscal outlook. The Ghana team, led by the Minister of Finance, Dr. Cassiel Forson, provided a detailed update on Ghana's economic performance since the cedis had remained stable in recent months and had even begun appreciating. He further highlighted the country's strong reserve position, which now stretches over 4 months of imports cover, a key indicator of resilience in external sector engagement. He further reported impressive revenue performance, with the Ghana Revenue Authority surpassing its first quarter target by over 2.4 billion cedis. An expenditure forcing emphasized the government's continued commitment to fiscal restraints, with spending on goods and services largely maintained at 2023 levels, ensuring prudent management of public resources while safeguarding essential service delivery. Moving on, Somalia's non-resident ambassador to Mongolia, Dr. Hoden Abdi, has held meetings with key Mongolian government officials towards enhancing bilateral relations. Both Abdi met with Mongolia's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Batseteg Batmoki, and the Minister of Education and Science, Peresevjin Narambazia, nations during her visit to Ulaanbaatar. The high-level discussion focused on exploring opportunities for cooperation in education, trade, and knowledge exchange, with both sides expressing a strong interest in building a long-term partnership based on mutual benefits and shared goals. Education was a key topic at the meeting, as Mongolia, known for its impressive literacy rate of 95%, has made significant advancements in its education system. The country was recently recognized with an international award for the excellence and accessibility of its online education programs, which have helped reach students in remote areas. In the area of trade, Somalia and Mongolia identified promising areas for economic collaboration, to include Somalia's export of agricultural products, seafood, and other goods to Mongolia. Moving on, opposition parties in Ethiopia's Tigray region have accused the newly restructured Tigray Interim Regional Administration of undermining democratic principles and monopolizing power. In a joint statement, the Arena Party, Betoya Betona Party, and Tigray Independent Party condemned what they described as an increasingly exclusionary and authoritarian approach by the administration under Lieutenant General Tadesse Werede. The parties said Tira was exhibiting characteristics of a military regime, accusing it of dismantling democratic institutions, suppressing dissent, and systematically excluding opposition voices from governance. They further alleged that the new leadership was reversing the relative political openness that had begun to emerge in the region after the end of the 2-year civil war. The criticism followed a sharp statement a day earlier by one of the main opposition parties in the region, Salsei Tigray, which categorically denounced the new cabinet formed by Werede as legitimate and dominated entirely by a single faction of the TPLF. The party said the cabinet is fundamentally incapable of fostering a genuinely open political space or creating the necessary condition for free, fair, and peaceful election. Moving on, Algeria's Justice Minister Lotfi Bojenmar says those involved in financial speculation may face prison sentence ranging from 30 years to life imprisonment as the government pushes to curb market manipulations. Addressing members of the National People's Assembly, Bojenmar said the authorities would not tolerate speculations, which he noted has spread from basic foodstuff to vehicles. The minister, the justice system, will use all available legal tools to protect the national economy, adding that anyone involved in speculating on the livelihood of Algerians will be dealt with firmly. Ejema further explained that the punishment for speculation could even extend to life imprisonment in severe cases. Harare Regional Magistrate Jesse Kufa has sentenced a 45-year-old Hopley man, Samuel Chipakacha, to 15 years in prison for allegedly sodomizing his intoxicated friend. He was convicted of aggravated indecent assault after a full trial. In her ruling, Kufa condemned Chipakacha's action, describing them as a violation of trust and human dignity. The court heard that Chipakacha sodomized his 60-year-old friend on the afternoon of February 23, 2025, following a beer drinking spree at Uncle Gray Shiben. State prosecutor Shambadzine Fungura told the court that Chipakacha took advantage of the complainant's intoxicated state to commit the crime. According to the state, the complainant, who lives in the same neighborhood as Chipakacha, was heavily intoxicated when he decided to leave the shebang. However, Chipakacha reportedly followed him to his house, found him lying on the bed, undressed, and complainant, and sodomized him. You're still watching the African News right here on Voice of the People Television. More stories after this break in business and sports. Do stay with us. Glad to have you back at the Studio Africa News, right here on Voice of the People Television. Now to some business stories. South Africa's average nominal take-home pay declined in March 2025, slipping 2.5% from February's 18,272 to 17,811 rand. In spite of the dip, however, the average remains buoyed above last year's 15,983 rand, highlighting both resilience and the effects of ongoing economic pressures. Head of Stakeholder Engagement at Bank Serve Africa, Shegeran Naido, attributed the decline in nominal pay to intensifying economic headwinds that are impacting growth and consumer confidence. According to him, this raises concerns over potential impacts on employment and earnings in the coming months. However, he said yesterday's announcement to scrap the proposed VAT increase offers some reprieve. Meanwhile, independent economist affiliated with Bank Serve Africa, Elise Kruger, noted a tempered outlook moving forward, referencing both escalating trade tensions and growing political uncertainty as significant factors likely to affect consumer sentiment and ultimately the economy. Still talking business, local currency annual inflation rate in Zimbabwe was at 85.7% in April, according to statistics agency data released on Friday. The release is the first time Zimstat has given a year-on-year local currency inflation rate since authorities launched the Zimbabwean gold currency known as ZiG in April 2024. ZiG is Zimbabwe's sixth attempt at a stable currency in less than 2 decades after a bout of hyperinflation under former leader Robert Mugabe. However, ZiG is now down almost 50% since its launch, according to Friday's exchange rate on the central bank website. And to end African news, we go straight to talking sports. For failing to settle outstanding payments to former Moroccan striker Khalid Bouataib, FIFA has banned Egyptian giant Zamalek from registering new players. The Cairo-based powerhouse received an official notification from the World Football Governing Body confirming the activation of the ban, which prevents the club from registering new players. According to board member Amir Adham, who broke the news via club's official media channels, Zamalek still owes Bouataib a hefty €983,000 from his time at the club, while Adham noted that the club had previously paid a significant chunk of the 2.4 million euros total debt. Delays in settling the remaining balance has proved costly. This latest setback could spell trouble for the White Knights as they look to bolster their squad for upcoming domestic and continental challenges. Role. Biele believes that Orlando Pirates' high-pressure environment could either alleviate Benny McCarthy's coaching career or severely damage his reputation. With McCarthy recently appointed as Kenya's national coach, leaving now could harm his long-term credibility and suggest a lack of commitment to building stable projects, he noted. He noted also that Pirates is not just a job, but a war zone, adding that no one walks into Mayfair for peace, but ready to fight for legacy every week. He added that this is what makes the rumored return such a dangerous decision for Benny McCarthy.
From the